Okay, I think we're going to start things now. Hello and welcome to SOAS University and to the screening of the film Hacking Justice, Julian Assange. My name is Nina Arif and I'm part of SOAS University's Influencing the Corridors of Power project, also known as ICOP. We've done a few events on Julian Assange before, and if you're interested in knowing more about us, please follow us at SOAS ICOP, and we can let you know about future events that we're doing. So before we start the film this evening, we're going to have a quick chat about some of the issues surrounding the case of Julian Assange. I have with me here the film's director, Clara López Rubio, and the musician and artist, Brian Eno. Unfortunately, journalist Peter Oborn isn't able to join us this evening. So I'm going to start with you, Clara. First of all, can you tell us, why did you want to work on a film about this topic?
Well, this is a long story. Maybe we can talk about this after the film. I just say this traveler started many years ago when I wanted to make a movie about Baltasar Garzón. Baltasar Garzón was a judge in Spain. He was the one who arrested Pinochet in 1998 here in London. And he's an expert in universal jurisdiction. And he had just been suspended in Spain. That's a long story, and you will see it in the movie. So I wanted to do a film about him, but so we went to visit him in Spain, to his village, and when we were there, it came out that he just had accepted as a lawyer, as a coordinator of the legal defense of Julian Assange. So we decided, okay, we will accompany this case from the beginning. And we thought, okay, in 1 year it will be finished. 1 year it will be solved, because so, and then we will finish the movie. And we were 9 years accompanying the lawyer, and the case isn't yet solved. So that was the beginning, why we started. So I was not an expert in WikiLeaks or something like that. I didn't know anything when I started. So it was for me like a journey, and I think that's a very nice approach. I think you will see it as a spectator, because you just make this travel with us directors around. Yeah. So I wouldn't like to tell much more. Maybe afterwards.
Yeah, like you said, we will have a proper discussion after the film, and we will open up to the audience for questions for Brian and Clara. But just before we begin the film, Brian, you've been involved in activism for Julian Assange for quite a few years. Can you just sort of tell us a little bit about why you wanted to raise awareness about this issue?
Well, it seems to me that this issue kind of sums up the state of complete hypocrisy that we now all live in and sort of have accepted to live in. And we live with a government, or a set of governments actually, throughout the world, who are openly deceiving the public and who think that that's perfectly fine and don't even particularly try to conceal the fact that they're doing it any longer. It's not even remarkable, you know, it's not even notable that Boris Johnson routinely lies, and that nobody even makes an issue about it anymore. And that seems to me that we're sort of breaking down some sort of fundamental consensus that we used to at least think we had. Perhaps we never did, but we used to think that we had a sort of sense of honor about lying in public office, that was not a good thing to do. And now it seems that that idea has been abandoned and everything is simply tactical, that the primary role of a politician is to stay in power at whatever cost. So this case, of course, sort of shows that up more than anything else. I think you have now a process of the slow murder of Julian Assange, really. It's clear that the Americans in particular, but us happily lapdogging along behind, want him out of the way. And we can't really do that. It would look too bad if we just assassinated him. So we'll kind of do it by strangling him slowly. And this is a horrible thing to watch. And whatever your feelings about Assange, whatever your moral position is on what he did or didn't do, this is not tolerable to me. So it's quite rare that artists have a way of doing anything that makes a difference, and I think art usually works in rather a slow and deep way on changing societies, but occasionally you get invited to do something that you think, well, that could help. And I was asked to do the music for this, so I did.
Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to start the film, because I know that's why you've come here. And as mentioned, we're going to continue the discussion with Clara and Brian afterwards, and you can also put questions to the panel. There'll be a couple of roaming mics coming around after the film, so just bear with me while I set this up.
Yeah, well.
So we're just waiting, while we're waiting for Brian to come back down. Clara, what we saw was sort of the culmination of a 9-year journey in this amazing footage. So before we talk about some of the issues involved in the case of Julian Assange, what was it like for you being on this journey in making this film?
Yes, as I told before, when I started, I thought in 1 year the film would be finished. So it was a very long journey, and there were many moments where we wanted to quit because the movie had no end. And we really looked at the lawyers, and we saw how determined they were, despite all obstacles. And we just go on. Our budget finished like 3 times, I think. And in those moments, we put own money, but always came money from somewhere. We started with Germany, with the television from Germany, and when the money was out, Spain came in, and then we had a little help of Belgium and French, Swiss, so we could manage to the costs of trips and everything, because we didn't get paid, of course, for the 9 years, but at the end, yeah. But it's incredible. I'm very, very honored having been witness of all these 9 years. Yeah, it was a great experience to grow.
And in the film, there were many moments where it seemed as though victory was on the horizon for Assange. So, Brian, now we see ourselves in a situation where the extradition has again been approved by the Supreme Court, and it's down to Priti Patel to make a decision on this. So, what do you make of that?
Well, that's a tragedy, really. I mean, the last person on earth I would like to make a decision about this is Priti Patel. She's a terror, really. And I think amoral, ambitious, quite clever in a sort of cunning way. Just the worst person to have in this position. And of course, your film isn't finished. Are you going to carry on? Because it's still going on. I mean, this could be the first of a series.
Yeah. Second part. Actually, I have a new project, but I just heard from the German television that they may want
Part 2.
Something, so let's see.
Yeah.
But actually, I'm finished. But I think I have the feeling this film will accompany us our whole life.
Yes.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, Brian, the story's not over yet. But in making this film, what would you say was the sort of most compelling part for you so far in this story?
What's compelling? What does it mean?
The sort of something that stands out in particular.
I think endurance, endurance from the lawyers, from Julian, from the filmmakers, no? Us filmmakers. that is an incredible teaching. Endurance, yeah.
And
yeah.
I went to the embassy 2 or 3 times while Julian was there, and even spending 3 or 4 hours in that place was so claustrophobic. It was terrible. You just really wanted to be out there. There was no fresh air. And I walked around the whole place. It's tiny, you know. It's like a small mansion flat in Maida Vale or something like that. And to try to imagine being in that for 9, 10, 11 years is almost unthinkable.
And it seems slightly ironic that Julian Assange and WikiLeaks, which exposed this detention without trial happening all over the world in places like Guantanamo Bay. Yeah. So it's rather ironic that Assange finds himself being detained without charge as well.
Yeah, well, it's the same irony that it's the whistleblowers who got punished in every case rather than the people who they revealed.
And on the subject of whistleblowers and journalists, if Julian Assange were to be extradited to America, what does this mean for the future of investigative journalism?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this kind of process always works to just scare people off. So, you know, there are going to be fewer investigative journalists because nobody wants to sacrifice 10, 12, 15 years of their life living in a small room. You know, it's heroic now to become an investigative journalist. And so it'll scare people off. I think that's the whole reason for this case against Assange. It's just to say to people, don't fuck with us, we can really mess your life up.
Mm-hmm. Well, the US prosecution's case includes allegations of espionage, computer fraud, theft of government property. Do you think there's anything at all in the US's case? Or do you think this is all completely...
Oh, I think probably everything they claim is to some extent true. The point is whether it's forgivable given what crimes were uncovered by it. I know they did hack government computers, so they did a lot of the things that they're accused of. But two important things is that perhaps that's forgivable in the circumstances. How else is that information going to come out in some cases? But the other thing is that much of the information was already almost public information. For instance, a lot of the stuff that Chelsea Manning revealed was kind of low-level security stuff, which 5 or 6 million people already had access to. So it wasn't exactly as if these were deep state secrets. They were just mildly classified military stuff.
And so just very quickly, Brian, I know you visited Assange in the embassy. What did you make of his mental state at the times that you visited him?
Well, this was a while ago now, so he was still in a relatively buoyant state. I mean, he's a very articulate guy, and he was sort of holding court. Each time I was there with maybe 15 or 20 other people in that one room with the big table in. And the first time I went, there were so many people that people were sort of crammed around the back of him. And but he was very coherent, and he's very, very smart guy. And he was very confident that somehow or other he'd be able to fight it. Mm-hmm. And watching how the various governments involved, just allowed a case to proceed on certain grounds and then just shifted their grounds. This is a very popular technique now. It's how people evade paying taxes as well. You set up a company in this place, and then by the time the authorities have just mobilized some way of finding a way of getting tax out of that company, you just move to another constituency. You know, you're in the Cayman Islands now, but you just wait until they've expended a lot of energy and money and effort on bringing a case, and then you move to Liechtenstein or Monaco or somewhere else, you know. And I think now that's being done internationally with legal affairs like this. So you'll notice the problem that they had all the time was that they would succeed in bringing a case, and then the governments that they were bringing the case against would just say, oh yes, but actually we're not arguing that any longer. Mm-hmm. So they would change the grounds upon which the cases were being fought. Mm-hmm. It's all about wasting people's lives. That's what it's about. It's about saying to people, we can wreck your life. Mm-hmm. I think that's all it is.
Mm-hmm. They are breaking the law, and we need to stop them.
Yes.
Okay, we're going to open to audience questions shortly, but just one last question from me to you, Clara. Mm-hmm. We get the impression from the film that there is a lot of public support for Assange. What can you say in terms of, is that support mirrored in the British press, would you say?
Well, my experience in these years following the case was that the press didn't report correctly. I cannot say it was they have a bad intention. I really think many people, many journalists today, they just copy paste.
Yes. And
they don't really research. So it's very easy. You see in internet, okay, so I repeat, rape, this, no? So that has made so much harm to Julian, and of course the sex case, it has made a lot of harm. And we experienced, while we were filming, there was not so good impression of Julian. When we were pitching the project in festivals, they said, oh, Julian Assange, oh, what's that? No? So, and then after Sweden dropped the accusation, or it began to get better. Mm-hmm. So I think there is much more support now. The people and the media are realizing that it is not what they thought it was. Mm. Niels Meltzer, the reporter, the United Nations expert on torture, thanks to him, it has changed a lot. The people really have a better image of Julian Assange. So it's a lot better. I cannot say how the press here in the United Kingdom is doing because I don't read it. Mm-hmm. So maybe Brian can say something.
I don't read it either.
Well, speaking of the press, I don't know if anybody saw the Metro today, but this was in the Metro. So this was handed to me by John Rees, actually, from Don't Extradite Assange. And in fact, if we can get a microphone to John up there. Sorry to put you on the spot, John. If you could just tell us how this came about, and also bring us up to speed with what the Don't Extradite Assange team are doing as well.
The way that got into the Metro is really very simple. We paid for it. You don't get that just because the press decides to do something. But I do want to reinforce the point that Clara made about the alteration in the coverage since it's become absolutely blindingly obvious that this case was always, and now unequivocally is, simply about taking a journalist and putting him in jail in the United States. I think that has altered the political climate and the press climate around the case. It is now simply a fact that the editorial line of The Guardian, of The Telegraph, of the Daily Mail, and of the Evening Standard is that the Assange extradition is wrong. And the last time I saw Julian in Belmarsh, which was before COVID, on both the last 2 times I talked to him, he said to me, do tell people, don't act as if we are a minority. Don't act as if we don't have support. The press support is there. Amnesty support this. Human Rights Watch supports this. The ACLU in the United States supports this. Perhaps every major human rights and civil liberties organisation on the globe support this. The National Union of Journalists supports this. The International Federation of Journalists supports this. The National Union of Journalists in Australia supports this. So when you're arguing this, don't talk as if you should be on the defensive. We're on the offensive on the argument about this. For one very simple reason. Because there's only 2 types of news. There's only 2 sources of news. There are official handouts. There are what government departments and government press offices give you and what corporations give you. That's one form of news. And the other form of news is the stuff that is unofficial, that they don't give you, that they don't want you to know. So if you want news that's composed of both those components and not just the first, you're a defender of Julian Assange, because that's what he and WikiLeaks did. It's that simple. The case is that simple. And I think people are beginning to get the scale and the momentous nature of this case now. So keep arguing. You know, popularity isn't power, but popularity can be turned into power. And Gareth Pearce, Julian's solicitor, said this to me once. He said, look, every court case is decided 50% in court and 50% in the court of public opinion. Now, Gareth can handle the court. We've got to handle the court of public opinion.
Thank you, John. Now, I have 2 student ambassadors with purple bibs on, so we're going to open the floor to questions from you. So please just raise your hand if you have a question, and somebody will come over with a microphone. Please make sure you speak into the mic as well. Okay, there's a lady up there, and we'll come to you next.
Hi. Hello. It's probably a stupid question, but the journalists that were murdered were from Reuters. Has Reuters not done nothing? What is Reuters' stance on the Afghan film that's still on YouTube, unbelievably? What is actually, what is Reuters doing about it?
Okay, and we'll...
I don't know.
Is it
It's a
something
good question.
No?
We'll take one more, and then we'll answer them both together. So can we get a mic down to this?
Thank you very much, and thanks, Clara. That's a really great film, and I was really happy. You know, it really covers a lot of stuff that, although we've heard, is being raised and people becoming more aware. My gut feeling is it's still it's a minority subject. So my question is going to be about how we really, and the speaker just mentioned, that we need to turn the public opinion, we need to ramp it up, and never more important than now. I suppose it's been important all the way along. So I want to ask about how we're going to do that. I've been to a few of the demonstrations in London. I've come down from Swindon, and I must admit I'm often shocked about how few people are out there. And when I talk to my people in Swindon, and I'm hoping to do a screening of the film in Swindon, it's really difficult. But this is the people that make up, the court of popular opinion that we talked about. I want to ask 2 questions specifically. So, I want to ask Brian, because you started off saying, well, artists, musicians, culture doesn't often affect change. I'm not sure I agree. I think that art and culture, and particularly musicians, have been often the driving forces of public awareness. I come from the Live Aid, Band Aid generation. So obviously, I'm not saying we recreate that, but I'd really keen to hear your reflection on how, I am shocked that the popular artists, with 1 or 2 notable exceptions, are not engaging in this, in Julian Assange. You know, we remember Free Nelson Mandela and the songs we had in the massive popular movement. What do we do to engage popular culture in this? Because that would be a great way to raise the bar. Nina, I know you're not here to answer the questions, but I'm fascinated about, especially when I go to demos, the age profile. And although someone said to me earlier that younger people are getting more and more involved, I don't sense it, and I'd love to know what your work with students is doing, and how can we get the younger people and use your networks to start raising awareness on this. Sorry about the long question.
No, great questions. I think maybe Brian, do you want to take the one that was for you first?
Yes, I didn't actually mean to suggest that artists can't do anything, but it's difficult to do something that isn't just propaganda. And I don't kind of like the idea of fighting propaganda with more propaganda. So it's difficult to do something that really changes the way people sense the world and feel about the world without just throwing slogans at them. And if I had a conversation with a friend of mine recently, and he said, well, why don't you stop being such a snob and start throwing slogans at people? And that's not a bad argument, and I've been thinking about that ever since. You know, maybe that is the right thing to do. What I wanted to say, though, was that I think art does change the way people think about things, but it usually does it rather slowly. For instance, the book 1984, if you take one example that we probably all know, it didn't produce any revolutions in 1948 when it was written, but it sort of did alert people to the possibility that the state might turn into a malign actor. So whenever we want to talk about that now, we say 1984. Just like we might say Kafka if we want to talk about the idea of the state as an incomprehensible labyrinth, you know. So those kinds of things become ideas in people's minds, but it isn't very quick. It sort of seeps into the consciousness and becomes part of our repertoire of ways of describing the world. So that's a little bit different from saying Free Nelson Mandela, which I completely agree was a good idea at the time. But I don't think it was that slogan that changed people's minds. It was a conditioning that had taken quite a long time of recognizing that black people might be as worthwhile as white people, for instance, which developed quite slowly and partly through the arts, showing black people doing things that we liked, you know, and that we felt strongly about. But so that there are kind of propaganda statements, and then there's deeper cultural change. And the second one is harder to identify, harder to do, and takes much longer. So we tend to think, I'll go for the slogan. I'm just not a sloganeer, I guess.
I think your next question was sort of directed at me, so I'll take that one. So in terms of, I mean, I agree with you. I think there is the majority of Assange supporters seem to be from a slightly older generation, and there is a sort of maybe a lack of as much enthusiasm or engagement with students, with younger people. So what we're doing with the SOAS is Influencing the Corridors of Power project is trying to sort of raise awareness of these issues for starters, because surprisingly, a lot of young people just don't know. They just don't know about Julian Assange, or they get their information, they get very sketchy information from the press. And so what we're trying to do is engage people. We had Deepa Govindarajan Driver here, who authored a brief for us, which went out to Lords and MPs, and we've held other events on this particular issue. We have started to get more people involved and engaged and interested in this, and we're still trying to do it. I've got two of my team members down here, Rana and Sanjana, so feel free to come and talk to us later if you have any ideas or suggestions of what we can do as well. But yeah, our goal is to sort of engage sort of students and younger people in these very important issues. But yeah, I think it is sort of just a lack of knowledge. And also the fact that we've had the COVID situation, we've had this lockdown where it's been very difficult to meet in person. I said to John earlier that it's very difficult to get people to rally over a Zoom meeting. So now that things have eased up a bit, we plan to do more sort of in-person events, and we obviously welcome your support for that as well. So.
I think one of the things that happened in the Assange case is that the people who wanted to bring him down very cleverly centered it around a sex charge. And, you know, that was such a volatile thing to talk about. In fact, the Niels Meltzer book, which is on sale outside here, or maybe being given away, is it? I don't know.
It's being sold, I think.
No,
£10. £10. It's very worth the money, I can tell you, because the whole investigation that Meltzer does, or the whole description he does of the rape charges and how that came into, well, the rape allegations, I should say, yes, yeah, it's really worth reading, because in fact, as I understand it, neither of the women involved wanted to make a rape charge. That was sort of foisted onto the case. In fact, they both were given assurances that any evidence they gave to the police was completely confidential and would not be fabricated into a charge of any kind or into an allegation of any kind. Mm-hmm. So I think it's almost like the intelligence services were waiting for a misstep like that they could turn into a reason to hate Julian Assange, you know. And I think that was really why his case got off to such a bad start, because that sort of confused public opinion enough for people to say, oh, I don't know, it's a bit fishy, I don't want to get involved with it.
Yeah. Should we take a couple more questions? Oh, sorry, the lady asked a question about...
I mean, if you think about it, I mean, that's the whole issue, isn't it? It was the murder of... It started with the children and the journalists. And I mean, we understand Assange was, you know, brought the news to the world, but the point is, what's actually happened with that case?
Has anything happened with the...
Yeah, to answer,
okay, can we get a microphone down here? Oh, sorry, this gentleman was just going to answer the question.
The lady's there with a mic. She's just keep her eyes open.
Yeah, just to try to address that, the whole.
So, yeah, if you can just introduce yourself.
Thank you.
Yeah, Fidel is in the movie. Maybe you recognize him.
I think you are touching the fundamental point here, which is the impunity behind all this, and that impunity is there because the U.S. Army, the U.S. Army men, they have immunity anywhere in the world except in the U.S. Courts. And the U.S. courts are military courts. So the case will be judged by the criminals. So they absolve themselves. So that's why thousands and thousands of war crimes are in impunity. They go sometimes through a formal investigation by the military courts, and they always find that nothing was wrong because they were in tune with the rules of engagement, which are wrong rules set by Julian and published by WikiLeaks. So no, nothing happened to the pilots that killed not just 2 journalists, but at least 15 people in the same event. All of them civilians, all of them unarmed. And one more thing I would say about the event is that video was published in 2010. The event happened in 2007. That video was in possession of the Washington Post long before WikiLeaks published it. A journalist from the Washington Post even published a book about him being in Iraq and describes the event. By the way, Chelsea Manning approached the Washington Post, approached the New York Times before approaching WikiLeaks. So nothing happened with that. It's very sad that the 2 journalists are killed, and that brings the attention of people. Reuters asked for that video immediately. They were denied the video because you cannot face what is the more powerful enemy there, which is the world industrial complex. And the life of 2 journalists are very, very, very precious, but they are not worth more than any other life. The life of that father that was killed because he wanted to save a person who was injured, and all those other crimes are also in impunity, because they are the judges of themselves.
So what you're saying is Reuters have done absolutely zilch.
No, Reuters cannot do much. They ask for the video immediately. Same day, next day, through the lawyers, they were denied. They were denied and they couldn't do anything. When this came in public, probably they were a bit weak, but what can they do? Can even if it's a powerful news agency, what can they do against the United States? Not much.
Well, the media is very powerful, and Reuters is a very powerful organization.
Okay.
They could at least do something. I mean, if you hear nothing from the
Okay, we're going to take just a couple. Sorry to cut you, but we're just we're nearing the end, so let's take a couple more questions. Maybe the lady in the middle, down here, and back at the top. Yep, we'll take one here and one above.
No.
Just talk. Can I just ask something about the actual film? Because it was a film, and a wonderful film, deeply moving, and I'm speechless about that. So just a quick question. I thought at the beginning you said that Brian contributed the music to it.
That was a mistake on Brian's part.
Because then I saw another name for the music, and
It's the wrong. I'm very embarrassed to say this, but it's the wrong Assange film. There's another film about Julian that I did music for.
Okay, all right. Sorry, just I was a bit confused when I saw it.
I was quite confused for a while.
Okay. But I'm still very grateful to you for whatever music you do. And this gentleman is complaining that only 2 musicians get involved in causes. Well, at least it's
Who's
2
the
of
other
them, but none from the classical music, which makes me think I should switch sides.
Yes, I think you should.
In the field of music. And the last thing, if I just can say very quickly, you mentioned at the beginning, Brian. Sorry, I'm having a go at you. That Boris Johnson is a liar and all that. Can I just mention that the leader of the so-called opposition is much more sophisticated,
Yes.
but I don't think he knows much about truth either. So sorry about that.
Okay,
Thanks.
and we had another question on the top. Oh, you got the mic?
I
Yep.
have the mic. I'm ready to go. My question is for Clara. This is obviously a film which is all about freedom of press, free speech and everything. And I was absolutely fascinated by the CCTV footage. It really showed well how dreadfully insulated that experience was. How did you get access to that CCTV footage? And then the wider question that comes from that, when you were making the film, did you find there were lots of scenarios where you were prevented from getting access to places because people were trying to stop you telling the true story?
Okay. The images of the security cameras, well, it's a very long story, but the legal team realized that the security firm, the Spanish security firm, was sending the whole pictures and information. So maybe Fidel, you explain this better, or I don't know, it's difficult. Well, or maybe I make it short. I got it from the lawyers, because in Spain there is a very interesting proceeding. We didn't have time to talk about this. Baltasar Garzón is leading. Well, there is proceedings in Spain where Julian is the victim, and the security firm is accused of sending the whole information to the United States. So this case will resolve soon, we hope, because if it resolves that the security firm was guilty and was doing something very wrong, maybe this could help Julian to show that this is how do you say that? Corrupt case, or corrupt accusation from the United States. So, yeah.
And did you have any, were there any times when you were stopped from filming and not allowed to film and had access issues and held back yourself?
Well, we had a situation in the embassy at the beginning where we were filming, where we got expelled from the security firm. We were brought out of the embassy, and the material we had shot was taken away from the security firm. That was very strange. We didn't understand that, because actually the security of the embassy was there to protect Julian and not the other way. So things strange happened. Yeah.
Okay. I know we could probably discuss this for much longer, but I'm going to have to wrap things up now. So thank you very much to our panelists, to Clara and Brian. And thank you so much for coming along today. Please do follow us at SOAS ICOP so we can let you know about more events like this that we do. So yeah, thank you and good evening.